Caden was born cold-hearted and all his emotions were given to his deceased first love. My family advised me not to be too stubborn, but I wouldn't give up and pestered him for 7 years like a moth flying into the fire. Later, he relented and I thought I had finally got what I wanted. It wasn't until I saw with my own eyes that he was intimately entwined with his secretary who looked 7/10 like that person that I realized that the living could truly never compete with the dead. After the wedding was cancelled, I became the abandoned wife of a wealthy family in the mouths of the media and the public. However, later, that haughty man humbly begged me to come back countless times. When Caden agreed to be with me, I was so happy that I couldn't fall asleep all night. But this joy was quickly diluted by reality. Even though I had become Caden's girlfriend as I wished, he had never taken me to meet his friends around him. Even when I was sick and in unbearable pain, he was still out enjoying himself in nightclubs. My best friend advised me to break up with him as soon as possible, saying there was nothing worth talking about with such a boyfriend who was still hung up on the past. You know very well who is in Caden's heart. It was his childhood sweetheart, his first love who had passed away. But I still wanted to give it a try. Because his first love was already dead. She would only be Caden's past, and I was his future. I thought that sooner or later, I would become the special one in Caden's heart. Up to now, I had already persisted for 7 years. Didn't he finally relent and agree to be with me? My originally low mood rose with hope again. I took out my phone and called Caden. It wasn't until the third call that someone picked up on the other end. It's already very late. When will you come back today? But a woman's voice came from the other end. Sorry. Caden drank too much tonight and fell asleep here. If you have anything, I can help you convey it. My mind went blank and I hung up the phone abruptly. I recognized this voice. It was Caden's secretary. I rushed to the hotel where Caden usually stayed that very night. When I stood at the door, I had an indescribable feeling in my heart. Behind this door might be the path of my future relationship. Finally, I opened the door with the spare key card. Under the dim light of the wall lamp, the two were hugging tightly on the sofa. The secretary's clothes were in a mess, barely leaving only her underwear, and the man's hand was on her lower back. Caden? She called the man's name in a low voice, and her hand was still stroking his chest. After the huge visual impact, the spare key card in my hand dropped to the ground. The clear sound was particularly abrupt in the quiet room. The two on the sofa stopped their actions. The secretary turned to look at me. For a moment, it seemed that the blood in my whole body flowed backwards, and I couldn't help shivering. In the blurred light and shadow, it seemed that Caden's first love had come back. At this instant, I could no longer deceive myself. His going out to have fun was never for socializing or business dinners. He didn't love me, even though I had loved him for 7 years. With my hands and feet ice cold, I watched them for a while before bending down to pick up the key card and gently closing the door. I returned the key card to the front desk. I would never come to this place again. I had once heard a very inspiring saying, I've seen New York at 3 o'clock in the morning. At this time, I also saw the empty streets at 3 o'clock in the morning. The sanitation workers were sweeping the ground with brooms. The wind was a bit chilly, and the garbage was flying everywhere. An aunt who came out to set up a stall handed me a bowl of rice noodle soup. Little girl, it's cold outside. You're wearing so little. Don't catch a cold. Yes, even strangers would care about me, but the phone tightly held in my hand was unusually quiet. Caden had never contacted me from beginning to end. The aunt saw that I was staring at my phone and sighed. Did you quarrel with your boyfriend? He's really heartless. He didn't even come out to look for you at this late hour. I don't know why, but at this moment, I really wanted to pour out my heart. I opened my mouth with a hoarse voice. I caught him checking into a hotel room with another woman. Auntie, do you think I should forgive him? The aunt immediately got angry. You can't forgive him. My former husband was like this too. But I couldn't divorce back then because my child was only 3 years old. After I brought the child to primary school, I came out to set up a stall. Although I don't earn much money, it can support my child and me, so I kicked him out. Auntie doesn't mean to persuade you to break up. If you can support yourself, don't wrong yourself so much. In your parents' eyes, you're a treasure. If they knew how wronged you are, how distressed they would be. Yes, I'm also a treasure in my parents' hands. In the past, I didn't do any housework at home, but now I cook and wash clothes for Caden every day, and I do the housework even better than the nanny. No matter how much my parents quarreled with me, there would definitely be dishes I liked on the table the next day. But when I quarreled with Caden, he could lock me outside the door. When I first got together with Caden, my parents had advised me that he was cold-hearted and not the kind of person to live a life with, and that I would be wronged in the future. But back then, I naively thought that as long as I loved him, it would be okay and that I could move him. In the end, only I myself was moved. Squatting on the side of the road, I lowered my head and ate the rice noodle soup. The soup was a bit salty, probably mixed with my tears. After returning to the house in Huading, I looked at the warm decoration and layout inside, all of which I had carefully selected. I had lived here for 5 years and had also fantasized about getting married to Caden here, having a cute baby, and holding the baby to bask in the sun on the balcony when I was free. Now I just took a simple look and then took out my suitcase to pack my things. There weren't many things to take, just a small suitcase. Actually, it said that moving can best show whether the other person loves you or not, because in the dressing room were all the clothes, watches, and bags that I bought for him, while he just asked his secretary to send me a bouquet of flowers on every holiday. Yes, I could maintain such a relationship for 7 years. Just after I finished packing my things, I heard the sound of the door opening. Caden, reeking of alcohol, came back. His clothes were wrinkled, and the bright red lipstick mark on his white shirt was so clear. I had seen it many times before, and he would just say, it was accidentally smeared on. Don't think too much about it. And then I chose to believe him. How stupid I was. At the entrance, Caden was changing his shoes. When he saw me, he casually ordered, "Autumn, pour me some water." His tone clearly regarded me as a servant. I ignored him. Caden frowned, glanced at me, and then noticed the suitcase in the living room. He frowned and said, "Going on a trip?" I shook my head and quietly looked at him. "Let's break up." I said it lightly. Caden obviously didn't take it seriously. He sneered and looked me up and down. "I drank too much last night. Don't be so temperamental." I gently placed the key to the house on the coffee table. "I won't come here anymore in the future. You can ask the aunt to throw away the remaining things. I've also sent a resignation letter to the HR department at the company." I used to think that it would be very difficult and reluctant to say these words. However, perhaps I had been disappointed for too long, and it wasn't as sad as I had imagined. Caden's expression was cold as he stared at the key on the coffee table. "Have you thought it through?" I looked at the rising sun breaking through the clouds outside the floor-to-ceiling window and nodded. Yes. The weather had been bad these days, with dark clouds covering the sky. Today, however, it was a rare fine day. "Let's just end our relationship like this." I pulled my suitcase and walked towards the door. Caden's angry voice rang out from behind. "Autumn, we've been together for 7 years after all. You've chased me for so long. Are you really going to give up?" I not only wanted to give up but also planned not to see him again in the future. He was just relying on the fact that I had chased him for so long, so he knew that I would tolerate everything about him and wouldn't dare to break up. So in the past, no matter how much he played outside, he would still come home at night. But now it's normal for him not to come home at night. I'm afraid he'll bring other women back in the future, right? All the things in front of me told me that there was no reason to hesitate. Yes, I'm sure. "Caden, we'll be strangers when we meet again in the future." After I moved out, I went back home. Because my parents had always been against my being with Caden, I only went back to have a meal during the spring festival every year. When my mother saw me, she was so excited that tears came to her eyes. She shouted, old man, look quickly. Our Autumn is back." My father came out of the study, still holding a writing brush in his hand. He looked at me and kept nodding happily. "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." My room was spotlessly clean. I knew that my mother cleaned it every day, even though I hadn't lived at home for 5 years. The dishes at noon were all the ones I used to love the most. Actually, I liked spicy food, but Caden didn't, so I followed his taste and hadn't had a good meal for a long time. The chili was so spicy that it brought tears to my eyes. But it really felt good. My parents didn't ask me what happened between me and Caden. They were just so happy to know that I would live at home in the future. The refrigerator was filled with fruits, and the table was also full of snacks that I liked. When I was a child, my parents didn't allow me to eat snacks, saying they were unhealthy. But when I grew up, they started spoiling me. Lazily lying on the sofa and accompanying my mother to watch TV, my phone suddenly vibrated. My best friend sent me several screenshots of Caden's WeChat moments. "Caden, the wedding is cancelled." These 4 simple words announced the end of us. I stared at them carefully for a long time and then replied, "Yes, we broke up." Then, my phone started ringing. There were so many calls coming in. It was so troublesome. I didn't want to explain. So I turned off my phone. I smiled and hugged my mother's arm, acting coquettishly. "Mom, my phone card is broken. Accompany me to get a new one downstairs." My mother was stunned for a moment and then smiled and nodded. "Okay. If something is broken, just throw it away. It's good to throw it away. It's good to throw it away." Yes, if something is broken, just throw it away. I got a new phone card and registered a new WeChat account. Then I sent it to several good friends and completely cut off from the past. Unexpectedly, my best friend flew over from the capital on the 3rd day. She took me out on a trip. My parents were very happy and said that it was my good fortune in my previous life to have such a good best friend. Indeed, my best friend really loved me. Going to the Maldives to feel the sea and the sunshine, feeding pigeons on the streets of Paris, France, admiring handsome men and beautiful women, going to Brazil to watch football and feel their enthusiasm, In just 1 month, I spent all my savings from the previous 5 years and also emptied my best friend's credit card. Could this be considered special forces style traveling? Surprisingly, I really didn't think of Caden, because I often woke up not knowing where I was. After returning to China, I started looking for a job. I couldn't slack off anymore and needed to earn money. However, the salaries in my hometown were generally not high, and I couldn't find a suitable one after 3 days of searching. At the same time, I also heard a lot of rumors about me. Like that I couldn't compare to the new secretary. I had been with Caden for 7 years, yet I couldn't match up to the secretary who had only been there for 7 months. And there were also rumors that I was a discarded woman from a wealthy family, that Caden dumped me before we got married, and that I couldn't even get a proper status after 7 years. Finally, there were also rumors that I was narrow-minded. It was said that it was normal for men to go out and have a wild time, and that everyone else was normal except me. Well, then I wish their future partners would be like that too. I was pleasantly surprised to find that now when I heard Caden's name, I felt extremely calm inside. I wasn't sad, wasn't sorrowful, didn't feel aggrieved, and didn't like him anymore either. My best friend had been here for the past few days to negotiate a business cooperation. When she learned that I hadn't found a suitable job, she teased me, "What's going on? Has our autumn actually come to the point where she can't find a job? Come on, today your bestie will accompany you to get drunk in a nightclub." Am I that kind of person? Well, okay, let's do it. I turned around and went to the closet to find a backless long dress, put on light makeup, and paired it with high heels. Look how pretty I was in the mirror. Mom pretended to ask casually, "Who are you going out with?" I smiled and kissed Mom's cheek, explaining, "Who else could it be? Bonnie asked me to go drinking. Tell Dad not to go to bed too early and come to pick me up at night." Mom beamed with joy. "All right, young people should go out and have fun more. Mom will make you some hangover soup." My mom is the best mom in the world. I used to neglect my parents because of a man who said he loved me. How stupid I was. My best friend was very satisfied with my outfit today. She decisively called 10 handsome male models, and they all stood in front of me in a neat row. I opened my mouth in astonishment. "Bonnie, how much money will this cost?" My best friend laughed so hard that she could hardly stand straight. "These are the new models signed by our company. I called them over to have fun together today. They'll go back to the capital in a couple of days. Would you consider coming with me?" I was so envious that I swallowed hard. I'd love to, but my parents are old and I want to spend more time with them. My best friend couldn't refute this reason and had to nod. "All right. If I find out that you're messing around with that scumbag again, I'll break your legs." I picked up my wine glass and clinked it with hers. "Don't worry. I was stupid before, but now I've come to my senses." The male model sat on both sides of me and my best friend. It was quite a big scene, and many people kept looking at us. Even the electronic screen above the dance floor often took close-up shots of us. A very handsome young male model like a cute puppy asked me, "Sister, I heard that you're looking for a job. Why don't you set up your own studio?" My best friend snickered and nudged me. I shrugged, "I don't have the money." The cute puppy brother said domineeringly, "I'll invest in you. Is 1 million yuan enough?" Instantly, my jaw dropped in shock. Looking at the Rolex submariner on his wrist, I swallowed hard again. "You're so rich. Why do you want to be a model?" The cute puppy brother chuckled, "Just for fun. My parents gave me 3 years. If I fail, I'll inherit the family business." My best friend also added beside me, "Otherwise, do you think I'd have the money to invite you to drink? If President Biden hadn't said he'd pay the bill." I was tempted and pursed my lips. "Then how about we talk about cooperation? After all, the salaries here were really low and I couldn't bear it anymore." President Biden took out his cell phone and we added each other as friends. He was really young, only 21 years old, and he was also an overseas student. Damn it, he was even a master of economics? To confirm that he wasn't joking, President Biden directly transferred 1 million yuan to me. "Sister, do it well. If you need more money, just come to me." I excitedly raised my hand and swore, "I'll get the contract ready in the next 2 days. In the future, we can split the profits 50 to 50 after deducting the investment. I won't let you down." President Biden chuckled and clinked glasses with me. "Sister, you don't have to be so polite. This 1 million yuan is just my pocket money. It doesn't matter if I lose it. This is the world of the rich." Just when we were chatting happily, my best friend suddenly pushed me and raised her chin, signaling me to look ahead. I looked up in confusion and saw Caden walking towards me with a cold face and big strides. "Long time no see." I used to think he was so handsome, but now I just thought he was quite ordinary. Maybe this is what it means to fall out of love. Caden's face was gloomy. He stared at me condescendingly, and his voice was bone-chillingly cold. "Autumn, where on earth have you been these days?" President Biden had a playful smile on his lips. "Sister, do you want me to help you?" I shook my head and chuckled. "No need. He's just my ex-boyfriend." The words ex-boyfriend made Caden furious. He reached out to pull me away. My best friend blocked in front, and the other male models also stood up in unison. President Ryden said lazily, "Don't be so rude. You should be gentle when talking to a lady." Caden glanced at him, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. It seemed that President Ryden really came from an extremely prominent family. I had drunk almost enough wine and didn't want to spoil their mood either, so I picked up my bag and stood up. "Then I'll stop drinking here for today. You guys take your time. Let's get together next time." My best friend was a bit angry and said with a tone of hating iron not turning into steel, "Autumn." I smiled and pinched my best friend's face, assuring her, "Don't worry. I've said that I've let go, and I really have. Otherwise, you can come and break my legs anytime." Speaking of this, I took a look at Caden's face and sneered, "I don't want to spoil your fun because of someone either." After I said that, President Ryden seemed quite satisfied with my answer, and Caden's face became even colder. With this assurance, my best friend felt at ease and let me go. I followed Caden out of the bar and didn't forget to send a WeChat message to Dad on the way, asking him to come and pick me up. Once out of the bar, the outside world became quiet all of a sudden. Caden took out a cigarette and lowered his head to light it. I carefully observed his expression. He looked a bit tired, with quite a lot of bloodshot eyes. His skin was dry, his hair was still neatly combed, and his figure was still great. The tailored suit outlined his perfect waistline. When he didn't smile, he looked cold and aloof, but when he smiled, he had a bit of a refined ruffian look, with a touch of a bad boy charm. He was the campus heartthrob when we were in university. Many girls were attracted to his looks, including me, but when I saw him again, I just thought he was quite ordinary. He wasn't as handsome as the male models just now, and couldn't even compare to President Ryden. They were all rich second-generation kids, but their manners, speech, and self-cultivation were completely different. Being carefully observed by me, Caden frowned slightly. "What kind of look is that?" I smiled slightly. "Sorry, Caden. May I ask what you want from me?" The word "Caden" put a distance between him and me. Undeniably, it was really effective that my best friend took me on a 1-month trip abroad. Because there were so many short but beautiful scenes in my mind, I suddenly felt that it seemed like I had broken up with him for a really long time. "Caden?" Caden sneered and carefully looked me up and down. "Do you have a new sweetheart?" I was a bit speechless but replied politely, "Caden, you should make it clear that we've already broken up and have no relationship at all. So it's really rude of you to ask this question so presumptuously." Caden casually put out the cigarette and threw it into the trash can, looking arrogant. "You've had enough fun during this period. It's about time you came back." I cast a sidelong glance at the little secretary standing not far away and said with a half-smile, "You're really overly confident for some mysterious reason." Just then, my cell phone rang. I looked at the car with its hazard lights on by the roadside, smiled and waved, then looked back at Caden. "Have a nice evening. Also, remember to stay away from me in the future." After saying that, I got into Dad's car and didn't look back. I was really happy tonight. Because I got an investment of 1 million yuan. Moreover, I really didn't feel anything when I saw Caden again. Originally, as long as your heart is filled with enough things, it's really easy to forget what happened in the past. Setting up a studio was my dream back in college. Although it came a bit late, fortunately, it didn't pass me by in the end. I've been extremely busy in the past half-month. I dragged my parents to help me find an office, handle the decoration, draft contracts, and also attract clients. President Ryden gave a thumbs up when he saw our studio in the video and said, "Sister, you're amazing." I raised my eyebrows seriously and said with a smile, "Please call me President Autumn from now on." President Ryden chuckled and nodded, "Okay, President Autumn. From now on, I'm no longer anyone's girlfriend but an independent and equal individual." I thought I wouldn't open my previous WeChat again, but a lot of client resources were stored there, and I needed to contact them. After opening WeChat, I deleted all the people I didn't need to contact in one go, then changed my profile picture to the studio's logo, posted a picture of the studio's address on Moments, and then privately messaged my previous clients to invite them to dinner. I used to be the director of the design department in Caden's company. I'm not only good at design but also quite proficient in interpersonal communication. Plus, President Ryden recommended some big orders to me. Really, I think we can get our investment back in at most half a year. My dad had already retired and had nothing to do at home, so he became my full-time driver. He thought that a boss should drive a nice car, so he used his savings to buy a Mercedes-Benz. Indeed, it has made it much easier to negotiate those high-end cooperations. My mom heard that the takeout near the company didn't taste good, so she started cooking for us at home and delivering the food every day. Moreover, we have a fixed schedule for going to and leaving work. Overtime work is paid double, performance bonuses are paid in one lump sum, and even interns are provided with the 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund. Soon, the scale of the company grew larger. President Ryden took the time to visit. I originally thought he just came to have a look, but he brought his father along and even increased the investment. In just 3 months, there was already a profit on the books. I decided to take everyone to the seaside for a team-building activity to relax. My colleagues were all very happy. Those who had family members brought them along. Young couples drew hearts and wrote their names on the beach. I adjusted my sun protective shawl and watched them with a faint smile. I used to do the same, writing Caden's name on the beach over and over again. Who would have thought that I could completely let go of the person I had loved deeply for 7 years in just half a year? After the team-building activity, everyone ate barbecue, drank wine, and talked freely. The youngest colleague in the company toasted me and said, "Boss, you're really a breath of fresh air in the business world." I chuckled. I also came from being an employee. I understand how hard it is for everyone. I owe all of this to President Ryden. After drinking, the male colleagues in the company sent the female colleagues home. I gave my parents a holiday and asked them to go to Sonia for half a month, so the youngest male colleague offered to send me home. He's a very honest person and insisted on sending me right to downstairs of my home. I turned the key and as soon as the door opened, I was suddenly pushed from behind. The voice-activated light came on, and Caden's face came into view. There was a strong smell of alcohol in the air. I frowned and took a few steps back to keep a distance from him while keeping an eye on the vase on the porch. If he dared to force himself on me, then don't blame me for being rude. Caden's tone was cold and brooked no argument as he said, "Who was the person who just sent you home? Your new boyfriend? How old is he?" I didn't want to anger a drunk person, so I explained calmly, "He's an employee of my company." Caden sneered and looked me up and down carefully. "The suit you're wearing isn't cheap, right? You used to have your hair loose, but now it's neatly tied up. You've changed a lot." I sneered in my heart and pursed my lips. I was the one who negotiated with those clients in the first place. Now that they're willing to follow me, you're not that petty, are you? Caden smiled disdainfully. "I don't lack money. You've been with me for so long. Don't you know that clearly?" "Yes, on the first day we started dating, he gave me a card with an unlimited credit limit." I smiled and nodded. "Yes, you don't lack money. But do you know that I've never used that card?" This surprised him. I shrugged and said indifferently, "Well, you've given cards to so many women. You probably don't even know whose consumption information keeps popping up on your phone." Caden took out his phone and searched through it. Soon, his expression became solemn. "You really haven't used that card? Then where did you get the money to buy those things for me?" I laughed so hard that tears came out. "I earned it by working overtime and staying up late in your company. Back then, in order to buy you that watch, I saved up my salary for half a year, but you only wore it once and then gave it to someone else without me knowing." Caden's gaze softened a lot. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I sighed. "The past is in the past. You can see that I'm living a good life now. If you have any conscience, you should just let me go." I had made it so clear, but Caden obviously still didn't get it. "Don't say these angry words. I admit that I was a bit too much in the past. I'll be more careful in the future." "Autumn, you chased me for so long. Now that you've suddenly changed, isn't it just a trick of playing hard to get? I've already come to see you twice. There's a saying that 2 is company, 3 is a crowd." I burst out laughing and shook my head. "Caden, you're still as narcissistic as before. I don't love you anymore. I really don't love you anymore. I hope you won't deceive yourself." "Thank you." Caden is a very proud person. Since I had said it like this, he naturally felt embarrassed to pester me anymore. Watching his figure leave, I didn't hesitate to close the door without any hesitation. When I was closing the curtains after taking a bath, I saw Caden's car still parked downstairs. The scarlet cigarette butt under the big tree was flickering on and off. He was waiting for me. I knew that. He was regretting. I also knew that. But what did that have to do with me? I had given him countless chances. If he had done just one thing that touched me during those 7 years, I wouldn't be so resolute as I am now. Back in college, he was the president of the student union. I was a quiet person, but in order to get close to him, I joined the student union. He was excellent and always ranked among the top 3 in academics. I also studied hard just so that my name could be next to his on the bulletin board. After graduation, he said he wanted to start a company and asked if I was willing to join him. I gave up the opportunity to study abroad and chose to follow him without hesitation. He said he liked gentle and sensible girls, so I was always quiet and obedient. I also knew that he had a first love he could never forget. It's just that she had always been in poor health. Caden had his first love in his heart and eyes all the time. He often got drunk and told me, "I can't forget her. I've known her since we were kids. She's so silly. Even when she was sick, she was still telling me to take good care of myself. And she asked me not to forget her." How could I forget her? I knew the whole process of their relationship. At that time, I was so naive that I even wanted to protect Caden. I even thought about surpassing his first love. All along, in order to catch up with him and make him like me, I gave up myself and was all alone. But after leaving him, I realized that I was loved by so many people. I'm the apple of my parents' eyes, and the most important friend of my best friends. After finding myself, I found that Caden was really a terrible partner, and I was also in a bad state back then. Now I'm the pride of my parents, the backer of my best friends, and the support of my colleagues. I don't have to be someone in others' eyes anymore. Nor do I have to compare myself with others. I'm finally free. My best friend hurt her foot while walking on the runway and needed to rest for a while. So President Ryden came to help me expand the company's business and took me to attend high-end receptions. I held his arm and he smiled and introduced me to everyone. This is the boss of Yunnan Design Company, Autumn. Although it's a newly established small design company, it has entered the high-end market in the past half year. Everyone smiled and took my business card, shouting, President Autumn. We all talked about design, the market, and stocks together. I didn't understand at first, but due to long-term careful listening, I can now also give some targeted suggestions and opinions. President Ryden even joked that I had become smarter. Sure enough, after I said something, the partners looked at me with even more satisfied eyes. Occasionally, other female companions would also be introduced, but everyone just smiled and praised them for being pretty. In their eyes, female companions are just accessories. Soon, I saw a familiar figure in the crowd. Caden showed up with his little secretary on his arm. He walked slowly towards us. There was a flash of surprise in his eyes when he saw me. President Ryden asked me softly in my ear, "Is it settled?" I smiled and nodded, "Of course. Don't you know my ability yet?" President Ryden smiled and nodded, "Of course. Even my father praised you. It's not easy to get the approval of President Gu." Caden smiled and clinked glasses with everyone, "Sorry I'm late." He didn't introduce the little secretary beside him, and everyone understood that she was just a secretary. Naturally, they didn't even bother to ask. Here, it's just that realistic. Partners and bosses are at the same level. Wives and girlfriends are at the same level. At the bottom are secretaries or people without a proper status. And now, I've already moved up a level in the business world. While I was touching up my makeup in the bathroom, Caden's little secretary came over with a look of contempt on her face. "You're really good at scheming. You managed to latch onto a wealthy man so quickly. But don't you ever think about how they would cooperate with a woman like you?" I looked at her face, which was a bit distorted with jealousy in the mirror, and smiled faintly. There was no need to argue with someone who wasn't on the same level. Seeing that I didn't say anything, the little secretary became even more complacent. "So what if you were with Caden for 7 years? In the end, you still lost to me. He loves me." I put away my makeup bag and said calmly, "Yes, Caden likes you very much. Wish you a harmonious marriage for 100 years. When I said this, my eyes were sincere and my heart was calm. Because I didn't love him anymore, I felt nothing. After a pause, looking at the little secretary's furious look, I added with a smile, "Since he loves you so much, why didn't he introduce you properly just now, huh?" The little secretary. The expression on the little secretary's face couldn't hold up any longer. I curled my lips in a smile. She had such poor emotional management skills. It was really boring. When I returned to the private room, those bosses all smiled and asked me about the cooperation. Obviously, in the game with Caden, I won without a doubt. In terms of connections, President Ryden overwhelmed him. In terms of strength, my design ability was second to none in the country. Everyone wasn't stupid and knew that the situation had changed. Since the task was completed, I didn't stay long. I greeted President Ryden and then went to the parking lot. Unexpectedly, Caden was waiting for me beside my car. There were quite a few cigarette butts on the ground. It seemed that he had been waiting for me for a while. "Autumn, let me take you home." Caden's tone was so matter-of-fact. I stood still and felt relieved when I saw security guards patrolling not far away. I didn't know when it happened, but I actually didn't trust him at all. Caden frowned and said impatiently, "Don't force me to use force." I took out my phone and said with disgust, "If you dare to use force, I dare to call the police." Caden looked at me meaningfully and said, "You've changed." I curled my lips. "Of course. I don't love you anymore." I also became more confident. Just like at the banquet today, President Ryden said to me, "President Autumn, you've changed a lot in just half a year." I smiled and asked, "Have I become more beautiful?" President Ryden smiled and nodded. "Yes. Now you're radiating the light of confidence all over. You're very charming." Yes, a confident woman is the most beautiful. There are many things that I only realized after breaking up. For example, it turned out that Caden would also bring breakfast. He carried a full load of breakfast, including pancakes from the south of the city, custard buns from the north of the city, and porridge from the west of the city. I looked down at my watch. "I'll give you 5 minutes at most. Say what you want to say quickly." Caden was stunned. He was a bit angry, but he quickly restrained himself. "Let's start over." I shook my head. "No." President Ryden was chasing my best friend. My best friend joked that if I got back together with Caden, I would lose my friendship, my career, and the love of my parents. How ridiculous. He's just an ex. Even if there were 10 exes, I wouldn't consider it. Caden softened his voice. What if I pursue you? I sneered. For another 7 years? Caden didn't say anything. I walked past him and could feel a pair of burning eyes staring at me from behind. But belated affection is cheaper than grass. Surprisingly, Caden was really patient. He actually brought breakfast for a whole month in a row. Watching his face getting haggard day by day, I just found it really interesting. Perhaps, when I brought him breakfast in the past, he felt the same way too. Sure enough, the one who is loved is fearless. On the weekend, I received a call from the cook at Huiting. She said that Caden was dead drunk and had been calling my name all the time. I said calmly, call 120 if he's drunk too much. I'm not a doctor. Then I added, when he sobers up, tell him that his pestering like this is really annoying. After that, I hung up the phone. My best friend gave me a thumbs up beside me. My autumn is so cool. I smiled and raised my goblet to clink glasses with them. Come on, cheers. For the company's annual meeting, President Ryden and I prepared a lot of year-end bonuses, the kind that could afford the down payment for a house. Everyone was extremely happy. I smiled and asked President Ryden, I took out my dividends. Why did you follow suit? Xiaogu looked at them being so happy and also smiled brightly. Money is just a concept to me. Usually, I spend money just for fun. Seeing them happy makes me happy too. Well, the life of the rich is so simple. But unexpectedly, Caden came again. This time, he was holding 99 roses in his hands. He got down on one knee in front of me, holding a big wedding ring in his hand. Autumn, let's get married. His tone was sincere, and his eyes were burning, gentle and affectionate. I knew that he really wanted to propose. Just like before, I once held the pull tab of a soda can and said with a smile that if you proposed to me, I would definitely say yes. Both were sincere. I squatted in front of him and said seriously, Caden, it's too late. I don't love you anymore. Do you know? After leaving you, I realized that the world is so big and there are so many people who love me. I, who used to be so humble in front of you, am also a treasure in someone else's hands. If you can't forget me then just can't forget me. But I hope you'll stay away from me and don't disturb my life. Caden's eyes were red. I really know I was wrong. I've already fired the secretary. I promise that I'll only love you from now on. I smiled faintly. So what? Should I accept your belated apology? Caden, your love is so cheap. However, Caden had changed. He seemed to have completely lost himself and was extremely gentle with me. I said that I'm willing to do anything for you. So what? Did you also say these words to your first love? I saw Caden's face change. You did, right? She's your first love. I also know that I can't compete with her for a place in your heart. So I let go. You should also let yourself go. If you don't love me, don't pester me. The secretary isn't the problem at all. In the past 7 years, no one has ever entered Caden's heart. Including me. I know my place. Besides, I really don't care at all. I love you. Only after breaking up with you did I realize that I had already fallen in love with you. Caden stopped me. Autumn, don't go. I really don't want to lose you. But only after breaking up did I realize that I'm so excellent and wonderful and that I'm no longer anyone's accessory. I shook off Caden and coldly threw out a sentence. Caden, I don't love you anymore. At the beginning of the year, I participated in an international design competition and unexpectedly won the gold medal. It was published in the newspaper for 3 days. The design orders of the company had been scheduled until half a year later. President Ryden stopped being a model and settled down to manage the design company together and prepared to open a branch company because my best friend agreed to be with him. On the day my best friend got married, I cried like a baby. Because seeing her happy was more important than my own happiness. My parents didn't urge me to start a relationship either. Caden was still chasing me, but he had learned not to disturb me because I called the police. I really called the police. He was in great pain and said that I was cruel. Yes, just as cruel as you were back then. Now I'm good-looking, wealthy, and have a great figure. What kind of man can't I find? Why should I look for a man in the trash? In the future, my life has just begun.